Të dashur teleshikues të televizionit të shqiptarëve të Amerikës. Problemet ekonomike janë problemet kryesore që prekin komunitetin shqiptar, por edhe të gjithë bashkëkombësit tanë, por edhe të gjithë shtetasit amerikanë. Sot kemi ardhur në zyrën e avokatit të njohur John Kallabati, i cili prej disa vitesh merret me problemet e bankruptcisë, të falimentit të individëve të caktuar që për arsye të ndryshme nuk janë në gjendje të përballojnë më borxhet që kanë marrë. Këto lloje borxhesh mund të jenë borxhe për shtëpi, borxhe të tjera, kreditkarta, probleme të tilla që shpeshherë e çojnë njeriu në falimentim apo ashtu si quhet këtu në Shtetet e Bashkuara, bankruptcy. Për të folur për këto çështje ne kemi këtu zotin John Kallabat. Dear friends, we have here in the office John Kallabat, who has a long experience, more than 20 years now, helping people resolving the problems of bankruptcy, problems of their personal bankruptcy. People are taking loans, people are taking houses, their situation changed, somebody becomes ill, he loses the job. We've been through all this crisis, and they don't know what to do. They will lose their house, they will lose their job, nobody can take back them a job because they have loans. So you have a solution for this. This is a solution that the legislators have thought, and they have all these laws here in these books that you show behind
Absolutely.
you. But the main thing that you are taking care about is the personal bankruptcy of the people who are afraid to undertake this road because they lost their job, they are unable to pay their debt. So what is your advice? Let's take this occasion, for example. If I was working in a factory, my factory was producing parts for the cars, and we know the car industry went through its own backup process.
Yes, it did.
So, and I lose my job. I've been in layoff for 2 years now, but now is my time. I don't have any money to pay my house. Should I evaluate any possibility to go bankrupt?
I think absolutely that's something that you should consider. Whenever you're having a problem paying your bills, whether it's your mortgage payment or if it's your credit card debts, then you should consider that as an option. One of the most important things is to make sure that you speak to a professional. A bankruptcy attorney can give you a lot of good answers as to whether bankruptcy can help you. One of the main goals we have when we're trying to file bankruptcy for someone is to evaluate their situation. We take a look at their amount of debt that they owe, and we compare that to their monthly income. You don't have to be unemployed to file bankruptcy. We have many clients who work regular jobs and file bankruptcy. There are a lot of things that cause someone to go through bankruptcy. Sometimes, like you said, they get laid off from a job. Sometimes they go through a divorce. Sometimes they got a cut in pay from a job they still have. Sometimes they have a new expense. Maybe a child is born. Maybe they have to care for an elderly parent, something they didn't have to do. But a lot of times what also happens is that maybe they were late on a payment or two on their credit card or their other debts that they have, and their interest rate goes up, and their monthly payments go from $200 or $300 a month to $700 or $800 a month. They can't afford that. That's where we come in.
Okay. Të dashur teleshikues, çfarë avokati po më thoshte, njerëzit kalojnë situata të ndryshme dhe do bëjmë një rezume të shkurtër të këtyre situatave që mund të jenë jo vetëm arsyet sepse një njeri ka humbur punën, por është ulur edhe pagesa, ka krijuar probleme të tjera, ka probleme familjare, divorci, probleme shëndetësore, dhe për një moment të caktuar interesat e kartave të kreditit rriten në 25%, ai nuk është në gjendje të përballojë atë. Jo gjithkush i cili humb çdo mundësi mund të kualifikojë ose mund të kërkojë për bankruptcy, për falimentim, por ekziston mundësia për të shpëtuar të ardhurat tuaja, për të shpëtuar edhe gjendjen tuaj familjare nëpërmjet institucionit të bankruptcisë, dhe këtu ai tha që duhet një avokat i përcaktuar, i specializuar në këtë fushë, siç është ai që ju ndihmon juve të zgjidhni problemet e tuaja. Nuk duhet kemi frikë nga bankruptcy. So people, they do not have to be scary about being bankrupt.
No, absolutely not. This is something that I think has been instilled by people for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Avoid bankruptcy at all costs and all these things. This is not true in 2013. The reason that people historically used to avoid bankruptcy is because the banks and financial institutions that used to give out loans used to kind of blackball you. If you file bankruptcy, they all avoided you. No one would give you credit for 10 years. It's not like that anymore. Now people who file bankruptcy within 6 months to a year have credit still available to them. In many cases, people's credit will actually increase after filing for bankruptcy. People will come in where they owe $10, $30, $50, $100, $200,000, whether it's credit card debt or medical bills or whatever, and their credit score is horrible. They owe a ton of debt. It's not going to go away. People start suing them, garnishing their wages, taking money from their bank account. Sometimes people knocking at their door to try to take property away from them. When they file for bankruptcy, their credit score is not going to increase overnight, but within a year or so, their credit score usually will shoot up because now they owe no debt, whereas before they did owe debt. And they also cannot file bankruptcy under Chapter 7 for another 8 years. So to most credit institutions, they are a more attractive candidate for credit than the person who owes a lot of money and didn't file for
bankruptcy. What's the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 in bankruptcy?
Well, sure. Chapter 7 is the get a fresh start bankruptcy. That's the form of bankruptcy that people file when they cannot afford to pay anything anymore. They can't afford to even pay the smallest amount of payment. You take their monthly income minus...
This is the 13.
That's a 7.
7, okay.
A 7 is when you can't afford any of your unsecured debt and you want to just wipe it out. When we evaluate someone for Chapter 7, we look at a lot of things. We take their budget into account. We look at their monthly income, their monthly expenses. If it looks like they're paycheck to paycheck, even if they have a little bit left over every month, they should still be okay. We also look at their property ownership to evaluate whether they would lose any property. Because one of the aspects of Chapter 7 is that a bankruptcy trustee is appointed to your case, and they are in charge of trying to liquidate your property so that creditors can get paid some of the money from what you own. But in 90+% of the cases, there is no property to liquidate. Because the government allows you to have a certain number of items. You can have a home with so much equity.
You can have a car because you need to go to work.
Right. But they limit how much equity. You can have a car, but it can only have so much in equity. You can have a house, only so much in equity. And same with furniture and regular things. Most people never have a problem with that. It does happen, and we're usually good at evaluating it. But that's one of the things that we look at. There's a number of things that we do look at, but how much debt a person has. Is it worth filing bankruptcy? Are there other options available which would be easier for the person to go through other than bankruptcy?
Avokati foli në lidhje me kapitullin numër 7 të ligjit të falimentit ose të bankruptcisë. Ky kapitull ka të bëjë me persona të cilët nuk kanë mundësi fare të paguajnë pjesë nga borxhet e tyre. Dhe ata shpallin falimentin si pamundësi për të paguar. Në këtë rast, në mbrojtjen e shtetit, personat mund të aplikojnë për bankruptcy, për faliment, dhe kjo nuk do të thotë se atyre do t'i merret çdo gjë nga bankat. Sipas kapitullit 7, atyre personave caktohet një tutor i cili merret me borxhet e tyre, me të cilat ai shlyen disa prej borxheve aq sa mundet, por nuk ka riposedim të plot të pasurive që ka individi. Mund të, në qoftë se ka equity, në qoftë se ka një pjesë të shtëpisë, ajo mund të t'i mbahet, mund të kufizohet mbajtja e makinave ose mjeteve të tjera, të mobileve të tjera, por megjithatë do të jetë në atë gjendje sa personi të jetë ta ketë të mundshme të jetojë një jetë normale. Kjo është bërë pasi njeriu mbas kësaj periudhe mund të rigjenerohet dhe mund të përmirësojë dhe kreditin e tij. Tani do të flasim edhe për kapitullin tjetër të bankruptcy-së, i cili është kapitulli i 13. Let's talk about the 13 now.
I know people would say, well, why would I want to be in a Chapter 13? That's a payment plan. Sometimes people want a payment plan. Let's say you're behind on your home mortgage, 4 or 5 months, 6 months behind, and they want to foreclose, or they're calling the note due. Chapter 7 doesn't do anything for that. It only eliminates your unsecured debt. Not all of, I mean, some things are not dischargeable, but we'll talk about that later. Under Chapter 13, we have the ability to reorganize that. So someone coming to us saying they're behind on their mortgage, we would take the amount that they're behind on their mortgage and spread that out for them for 3 to 5 years and let them pay that over time so they won't lose their home. The same happens with a car. Someone comes to me and says that they want to repossess my car. I haven't paid in 3, 4, 5 months or more. I can sometimes even reduce the amount that you pay on the vehicle to how much the vehicle is worth and not how much you owe. I can reduce the interest rate. I can spread out the payments for 3 to 5 years, even if you are required to pay it sooner. Those are the kind of things we can do.
But you have, in this case, I'm taking a scenario of somebody having to lose his house, so or is already is ready for foreclosure. You have not, if you have the possibility to pay, you have to pay. You cannot say that I'm not paying because I'll lose this house anyhow.
If you have the ability to pay, usually you're not going to be in the situation. Most of the time, the people who have the ability to pay are not going to be coming to see me. They're going to be paying. The people that come to see me is when they see they're in trouble and they cannot afford to pay, or that there's something that happened temporarily they couldn't pay because maybe they were laid off. So they come to me and say, well, I wasn't able to pay for some months, but now I can pay. But the bank won't work with me. They want all the money right now, but I can only afford to pay the regular payment because now I have my job back, or I'm working, or my problem that I had is gone. So what Chapter 13 does is say, okay, we're going to give you a chance. Let's see if you can do that. We'll give you your regular payment, add a little bit extra so you can catch up, and now you have the opportunity to save your home and save your car.
So what happens to the credit in the meantime?
Well, either Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, in either of these cases, there's going to be some impact on credit. If you had good credit before you filed bankruptcy, this happens sometimes. I have had people come to me and say, John, I'm current on all my payments. I've paid all my credit cards. It's not really the right representation, because arguably they may be current, but what they sometimes are doing is robbing Peter to pay Paul. They take a cash advance from one credit card to pay the other payment on the other one, and they use their income from their check not to live on, but to pay the credit card debt. This we call robbing Peter to pay Paul. It looks like your credit is good, but it's not real.
We have another expression about that. Italianos ve apprenas, but that means that you take from somebody. It's the same expression.
Yeah.
And you pay some other loans. Të dashur teleshikues, në çka biseduam me avokatin kishte të bënte me kapitullin e 13 të falimentit apo të bankruptcies. Kapitulli 13 në një rezume të shkurtër, sipas avokatit ndodh në rastet kur ju jeni mbrapa me pagesat, por jo ku nuk keni mundësi të pagoni fare, të cilët hynë në kapitullin numër 7. Nëse keni mbetur pas në pagesat e shtëpisë suaj dhe kreditorët ju kërkojnë të paguani pjesën, bankat nuk marrin pjesë për t'ju lehtësuar mënyrën e pagesës dhe nuk ju krijojnë ju mundësi të paguani, pasi një periudhë caktuar kohe ju keni pasur probleme, të cilët kanë pasur punë të ardhurave, keni humbur shtëpinë, keni pas divorc apo gjëra të tjera të cilët ju kanë bërë që të humbin të ardhurat tuaja, atëherë në këtë mes hyn kapitulli i 13. Me ndërhyrjen e avokatit mund të bëhet riskedullimi i pagesave të ndryshme të cilat ju keni marrë, duke i krijuar mundësi që t'i paguani ato në kohë. Dhe në këtë mes hyn në fuqi edhe zbatimi i kapitullit të 13 të ligjit të bankruptcies. Dhe për këtë ju duhet një avokat si zoti Kallabat, i cili ju ndihmon pikërisht për të realizuar këto pikësynime ose për t'ju shmangur këto vështirësi në jetën tuaj të përditshme. E pyet atë nëse ndikon kjo te krediti ti thaj preket sidoqoftë, por megjithatë ne përpiqemi që nëpërmjet të rrugëve të ndryshme krediti të arrihet të përmirësohet më shpejt se sa do të ishte nëse nuk do të paguani të vazhdoni të ishte në njëjtën situatë. Let's take another situation now. So especially most of the bankruptcies that you see, personal bankruptcies, are related to house loans. During this period, during the period of the big real estate crisis, what are the main issues that you resolve through bankruptcy for people not losing their home because it's their main property?
One of the most important things that we've helped a lot of people do is either catch up on their home if they've fallen behind through Chapter 13, in many other cases, through Chapter 13, one of the advantages that it has that Chapter 7 does not is you have the ability to eliminate the second mortgage. And this is a big thing. Many people back in the early part of the 2000s and even in the late 90s were getting 80/20s or were getting home equity loans after they already had their home. And now either the interest rate went up or they were on a interest-only loan and now it converted, or sometimes the debt just won't go away. They've got a home that's worth $100,000 and they owe $150 to $200 on the first and another $50 on the second. They can't afford to pay all that.
So what about the balloons? Because I have a second mortgage.
It's the same thing. A Chapter 13 can eliminate even the second mortgage or the balloon payment. Even on a first mortgage, if there's a balloon payment, it is sometimes possible for us to spread that balloon payment out in a Chapter 13. And if there's a second mortgage or a home equity loan, we usually can get rid of that. If the home has gone if it's gone down in value, we can get rid of the second mortgage and all the other unsecured debt.
But through the bankruptcy. So it's not like refinancing.
It's different. We're not refinancing the second mortgage. We are eliminating it. With the first mortgage, bankruptcy still cannot restructure the payment on the original loan. All it can do is restructure the arrears payment.
Yes.
The ongoing payment, there's nothing we can do. That's a loan modification, which is a little bit different. We do stuff like that, but that's not through bankruptcy. And you asked about how we help people with this crisis that's happened. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's happened through Chapter 7 is that when people don't want to save their home, this has been more common now than all the other years I've been practicing. Since 2008, I would say, we've seen more of this, where people don't want the home. They've got a home that either because of the economy they cannot afford to maintain, and they've let the home go down and it's not worth what it used to be worth, and it's not worth what they owe, or that they owe so much more on it between a first mortgage, a second mortgage, and they can no longer afford to pay. Bankruptcy will eliminate all of the debt, even the first mortgage deficiency balance. Now, they'll have to leave the home.
Yes, but they can
there's a way out.
They can get another home after that?
Yes, I'll tell you something. And this is also something people are afraid of and they don't understand how bankruptcy can actually help them, is that they are going to have, let's say, a foreclosure on their home. By filing the bankruptcy, especially if they file it before the foreclosure, that can buy them more time in the home, number one, which is very important while people are suffering a financial hardship. And number two, during this period that we're eliminating all of this debt also, they're in a position where they can save up some money. They may be able to stay in the home for 1 to 2 or more years without making any payment on the mortgage and save up some money. The money that they save up, they can use to put down on a new home that they want to purchase, or that they can rent a home and have a little bit of extra money. But usually the time period to recover on your credit for purposes of a home is 2 years. It's not that bad. Mm-hmm. You may have 1 year to 2 years in the home you're in anyway. And by the time that period finishes, you may already be in a position to qualify for another loan for another home.
So there is a tendency now just to going through bankruptcy in order they can say, let the home go?
That happens all the time.
Të dashur teleshikues, atë që ka po thoshte avokati kishte të bënte me zbatimin e kapitullit numër 7. Ajo që ka vije të re kohët e fundit, sidomos në kuadër të krizës së real estate'it, shumë persona po përpiqen të kalojnë në kapitullin numër 7 dhe të kalojnë në bankruptcy duke e kthyer shtëpinë e tyre bankave, sepse për arsye të ndryshme ata kanë pasur borxhe të mëdha, borxhe para, borxhe të dyta, borxhe të cilat nuk kanë mundur t'i paguajnë. Atëre, si mënyrë më e shpejtë për të rimëkëmbur është kalimi në bankruptcy. Në kalimin në bankruptcy ju jep një farë pauze, ju mund grumbulloni para në atë periudhë të jetoni në shtëpinë që akoma nuk është foreclosure, ose mund grumbulloni një sër parash ju pagoni tashmë për të shlyer atë shtëpinë e cila vlera e saj ka rënë pasi nuk është mirë mbajtur, ose vlerat e përgjithshme të shtëpive kanë rënë, ose borxhet që keni marrë një herë një kohë janë shumë më të mëdha se sa vlera reale e shtëpisë. Në këtë mes hyn në lojë pikërisht kapitulli numër 7 dhe mjaft njerëz kohët e fundit që nga viti 2008 ku ka filluar kriza e shtëpive kanë zbatuar këtë duke e krijuar mundësinë atyre të cilët mund të kalojnë në një shtëpi tjetër, mund të marrin një shtëpi me qira dhe mund të rindërtojnë kreditin e tyre. Kreditet përgjithësisht mund të rindërtohen për një periudhë 2 vjeçare, thot avokati, dhe duke theksuar atë që ka thënë edhe më parë se kalimi në faliment nuk është humbja e gjithçkaje, nuk është apokalipsi. I was telling in Albanian that being in bankruptcy is not an apocalypse. So
That's right.
You are not lost at all. There is light at the front at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. The whole process of bankruptcy is meant to rehabilitate you credit-wise. It's meant to get you that fresh start. And that's why we encourage people when they qualify and when they are in the right situation that they should consider bankruptcy. And the only person that's going to be able to give them, I think, the right direction on how to proceed with this is a bankruptcy attorney. They're going to be able to evaluate your case to tell you how bankruptcy can help you. And if there is something better that can help you, they will explore that first. Bankruptcy is not the first choice. It's the last choice when there's no way you can afford to pay the debt. And most bankruptcy attorneys will evaluate your situation to decide if this is the best thing for you. But again, there are so many things that it does that people don't even realize it can help them with. Until they sit down with me, people say, oh, wow, I can do this. I can get rid of taxes in certain situations. I can do this. When I explain it to them, it changes their life. And I think that that's one of the most important things that you want to take from bankruptcy is that get a fresh start. Start new, wipe out the debt, and go from now going forward and not looking back towards the credit and what it did.
Të dashur teleshikues, atë çka po thoni me avokatin, fakti që bankruptcy ose falimenti nuk është fundi i botës, sepse gjithmonë ka një dritë në kuadër të bankruptcies. Bankruptcy mund t'ju ndihmojë pavarësisht se është hapi i fundit që ju mund të ndërmerrni. Avokati mund t'ju thotë ju metodat dhe rrugët paraprake me anë të së cilës ju mund të evitoni në etapet e tjera bankruptcy. Nëse kaloni në bankruptcy nuk është fundi i botës, ashtu sikur se tham, dhe shpeshherë njerëzit që vinë këtu kur mësojnë se si me anë të procedurave që avokati mund t'ju shpjegojë si mund të shmangin edhe pagesat e ndryshme të taksave nëpërmjet procedurave të bankruptcy, si mund ata të ruajnë një pjesë të ardhurave të tyre, se si ata munden të ruajnë një pjesë të shtëpisë së tyre ose diçka tjetër, pavarësisht kësaj sepse ata kalojnë një proces të veçantë që është procesi i bankruptcy. Prandaj nuk duhet të kenë frikë nga falimenti i personal, por falimenti personal do të shtyjë ata të kuptojnë sepse mas një farë periudhe kohe ka përsëri mundësi që ata të rimënkëmbin jetën e tyre ekonomike dhe mos mendojnë më vazhdimisht vetëm për pagesat e kreditin e gjërat e tjera. When can I improve my credit if I'm bankrupt?
The process, let's talk about the timing that bankruptcy takes, and that's going to help people understand how it works. Once people contact us to file for bankruptcy, usually we move fairly quickly. The bankruptcy is usually filed within a few days of them coming to see us. And from the date they come and see us, it's about 30 days until they go to court. Now we're speaking of Chapter 7. And about another 2 months or so until they receive a discharge of their debt from the court, assuming that there's no problems. From that point, you are now cleared of all of your debt. If you want to get a car, if you want to get a credit card, if you want to get any other type of credit, you can go ahead and apply for it. There are many financial places that will go out of their way to give you credit.
To give you credit if in this situation after you are bankrupt.
That's
and
right.
You declare bankruptcy?
That's correct.
Oh.
There are places that are seeking you out. You're going to get pre-approved things in the mail that will say, and not everyone, but most people will get these things shortly after they receive their discharge. Some of them even acknowledge that you filed for bankruptcy and say, we know you filed. We are here to give you a start with your credit and apply for this credit card. Now, yes, the interest rates are going to be higher, but it's an opportunity to reestablish credit. So if you are going to reestablish credit by getting one of these credit cards, be sure to pay in full each month, not finance. And the idea behind this is to have some established credit history. Another thing that people will do is they will apply for secured credit cards. You put $500 on a secured credit card,
And
you
you
leave
pay
the money
them.
with them. Yeah, and this helps increase your credit. Car loans. This is a big thing that people ask me, well, I'm going to need a car. Can I get a loan? Well, my question to them sometimes is, can you get a loan now? They say no. I say, okay, well, then it's only going to get better, because assuming you've got income, once you get your discharge, 3-4 months from the time that you come and see me, then you will be able to apply for a car loan. And they're going to look at your income and they're going to see the bankruptcy, but there are ways to finance you. Again, it's going to be a higher interest rate, especially in the first year. But as you go through year 1 and year 2, you're going to see such a big jump in your credit score, assuming you don't do something to make it worse, that you're going to have a lot of banks that are going to be willing to give you that car loan, and not even at a really bad rate. I have many people that come to see me 1 and 2 years after their bankruptcy, and they say they've got really good credit rates, 5, 6, 10%, 12% on getting a car loan. On a home mortgage, it's 2 years. If you want to get a home mortgage and you otherwise qualify, under the guidelines of Fannie Mae, you're going to have to wait about 2 years from the date you receive your discharge. But that's not that long.
E pyet avokatin, a ka një farë periudhe për rimëkëmbjen e kreditit për personat të cilët kalojnë në procesin bankruptcies? Ai thotë që me të përcaktuar si procesi dhe bëhet shkarkimi, ju duhet paraqiteni në gjyq dhe duke filluar që nga ai moment fillon procesi i larjes së borxheve tuaja, pasi që nga ai moment e përtej ju nuk keni më borxhe. Borxhet e tyre për shkak se ju keni kaluar në bankruptcy nuk ju quhen më si borxhe. Por është e mundur këta personat të rindërtojnë kreditin e tyre për të marrë një makinë apo për të marrë një shtëpi. Po flasim për kapitullin numër 7. Ai thotë është më e vërtet shumë shpejt dhe do ta biteni që për 2-3 muaj personat të caktuar, kompanitë të caktuar janë interesuar që t'ju japin juve kredi, pikërisht edhe pse ata kanë mësuar që ju keni kaluar në këtë procesin e bankruptcies. Ndërsa për sa i përket kreditit për të marrë shtëpi, sipas Fannie Mae, ajo do të zgjat deri në 2 vjet, është disi më e vështirë periudha, por kam parë njerëz të cilët kanë ardhur me kredite të përmirësuara, thjesht pasi ata kanë arritur të paguajnë kartat e kreditit në kohë drejt për drejt, apo dhe pagesat për shtëpinë, dhe kanë shpëtuar një herë mirë thjesht edhe nga procedura e bankruptcies që cilën kanë kryer me avokatin. Mr. Kallabat, I have heard about something in the news that the legislators are thinking about removing the bankruptcy. Is that true or what?
I have not heard of that if it's true. Though a few years ago there was a big change that happened in bankruptcy back in October of 2007. So it's been about a good 5.5 years or so since the new legislation has taken effect. And I think that might be some of the buzz, that people think that they were going to eliminate bankruptcy. They weren't. The idea behind the legislation was to eliminate people who have the ability to pay from filing Chapter 7 to just wipe out their debt. They wanted them to file Chapter 13. Now, by coincidence, the economy just happened to go down right after that. So it really did not have any impact on most people's ability to file. People continued to file. As a matter of fact, filings went up quite significantly as the economy went down. So no, bankruptcy is still alive and well. As far as I know, there is no legislation pending in our government to try to eliminate bankruptcy. They're always trying to curb the ability of the people who have resources to pay from filing for straight Chapter 7.
Now, we talk about credit, but I see recently, and in the news is there a big talk about that, about the issue of companies hiring. Companies are starting checking your credit. They don't want you to be bankrupt in order to hire you. They don't hire you if you are bankrupt. Is any legal issue on this,
Well,
or is their opinion?
There are laws that are there to protect people, individuals who file for bankruptcy, from that type of, job problem. But it's, even though the laws are there, they say you cannot be fired for filing bankruptcy and they cannot discriminate against you. You're always going to have a situation where an employer is not going to necessarily tell you that it's because of bankruptcy. But I want you to look at it this way, and the viewer should look at this the same way. If you have a situation where you need bankruptcy, the chances are that you've got a lot of debt. An employer who's going to discriminate against you because you filed bankruptcy is even more likely to discriminate against you because you have a lot of debt that you can't afford to pay. So if they're going to check your credit to find out whether you filed bankruptcy, they're going to see the 20, 40, 60, 100,000 or more dollars that you might owe to creditors, and that would turn them off even more from you than having bankruptcy. As a matter of fact, when the casinos first came to Detroit, I had an influx of people who filed for bankruptcy because they were told by whoever they met with, whether it's human resources or what have you, that they've got all this debt and the casino will not hire them because they're a risk and that they should file for bankruptcy. They come in, file bankruptcy, and then they got hired because they weren't afraid, for example, maybe that they would feel tempted to steal money or do something to get out of debt. Well, now the debt's gone. The bankruptcy is there, but the debt is gone. And in these days, when so many people are filing for bankruptcy, it's going to be difficult for employers who want good employees to discriminate against those people because they file for bankruptcy. And again, it's not legal to do it anyway. But, people do worry and say, well, maybe they'll say it's from something else. But if they're going to base it on bankruptcy, they're sure going to base it on debt if you have a lot of debt.
Shumë kompani fillojnë duke bërë kërkesat për kreditin tuaj në rast se duhet t'ju marrin ju në punë. Dhe pyeta nëse kompanitë fillojnë nuk të marrin punë, thotë, ti ke kaluar në bankruptcy. Avokati thotë kompanitë nganjëherë shohin që ti ke shumë borxhe, është më mirë që ti mos kesh borxhe pa të marrin në punë. Nuk ka ndonjë gjë të qartë ligjore në këtë mes, por secila ata mund thonë nuk të marrin në punë se nuk pëlqejnë dhe mund të kenë një justifikim për këtë, po më mirë ata do të marrin njëri që ka kaluar në bankruptcy që nuk ka borxhe sesa njëri që ka borxhe. Let's say I am not in a good situation, why I to decide to come to you, why I don't go to another lawyer for bankruptcy?
Well, I think one of the most important things that we pride ourselves on is the experience that we have. We are committed to bankruptcy. That is what we do here. We're not a general practice office. We are a bankruptcy office. And bankruptcy is one of those areas where, because it's set up by a bankruptcy code, it's not something that you'd want to trust to someone who's coming in today doing bankruptcy because it's the area of practice of the month or of the year, but that they've been doing it for a long time. I have been filing bankruptcy since 1994, I think, is when I first started filing my bankruptcy. So we're talking about 19 years. Before that, I worked for a bankruptcy office for a few years. So I've been involved in bankruptcy for over 20 years and have been practicing specifically towards bankruptcy for over almost 20 years now. And we've represented several thousand, I would say almost 8,000 debtors in bankruptcy over these years. And experience is very important because when you are dealing with someone's property and their possibilities of losing their property or losing property that they're going to acquire in the future, you want someone who's got that experience, someone who handles specifically bankruptcy, and someone who's got competitive rates, someone who's going to be doing a good job for you, who's going to answer all of your phone calls and answer all of your questions and work diligently to have the same goals be successful as what you have in your mind. And that's one of the things we do here. We have a very caring staff, a very caring office, and we are compassionate to people's situation. And I think that again will go a long way towards helping people, and that's why people choose us.
Të dashur televizikuese, pyet avokatin, nëse unë ndodhem në një situatë në prag ose një person ndodhet në një situatë në prag të bankruptcy, pse duhet ai të zgjidh këtë zyrë avokatore, pse duhet të zgjidh ai Kallabatin si avokat mbrojtës? Ai tha se un kam një përvojë më shumë se sa 20 vjeçare në fushën e bankruptcy, dhe zyra jonë ka mbështetur gati rreth 8.000 raste të personave të cilët kanë kërkuar bankruptcy. Prandaj është përvoja ajo që të bën të keni besim tek ne dhe ju duhet t'ja kushtoni të ardhurat tuaja ose pronën tuaj një njeriu i cili ka besim, jo një njeriu që fillon ditën e parë ta kryej bankruptcy si avokaturë sepse ajo është në modë. Ne kemi një periudhë të gjatë, i njohim gjithë detajet e problemeve dhe fakti që kemi pasur sukses edhe njerëzit i kanë rifilluar jetën e tyre nga fillimi tregon që kjo është arsye sepse keni një staf të përkushtuar për të zgjidhur problemet tuaja. Do you have Albanians which have come to your office in order to be saved through bankruptcy?
I have a significant amount of Albanians that have come to me over the years, and that's one of the reasons why I sought to advertise with this station, is because I have a lot of people from the Albanian community that come to see me. I think it's very important to have someone who's in tune specifically to some of the dynamics of people's culture. And I am very accustomed to dealing with the Albanian community. I've represented not only individuals who are hardworking people in the Albanian community who work for companies, but I've also represented a number of people in the Albanian community who are business owners, who have had their businesses fallen apart and have had to seek my assistance to help them with that. And I think that of the bankruptcy attorneys all through Michigan, and especially in the metropolitan Detroit area, I represent more small business owners in Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 than most of the people that are practicing in the area of bankruptcy in Metro Detroit and through the state of Michigan. Again, I represent a number of people who do that, and people in the Albanian community, similar to the people in my community, are small business owners, and some of them have experienced a lot of hardship during these hard economic times, and I think that we've done a very good job in helping people. And I've received a lot of referrals, and again, have a lot of people who not only I do work for, but who send me a lot of business in this community.
E pyet avokatin si e ka ndihmuar ai komunitetin shqiptar, ka pasur ai në komunitetin shqiptar mjaft persona të cilët kanë aplikuar për ta. Ai do të thotë që ka mjaft persona nga komuniteti shqiptar, din që janë njerëz punëtor, por ata i ka çuar në situata të borxheve të ndryshme, ose edhe biznesmen të vegjël, ashtu siç janë edhe ata të komunitetit, nga ai vjen të cilët janë ndodhur në situata për të cilët janë detyruar të shpallin falimentin. E ai i ka ndihmuar ata, dhe kjo ka bërë që ata të jenë jo vetëm klientë të tij, por të jenë edhe persona të cilët e kanë reklamuar kompaninë. Dhe kjo është një nga arsyet sepse avokati vazhdon të reklamojnë në televizionin ton, pasi beson tek televizioni, beson se ai mund të ndihmojë komunitetin shqiptar të më këmbet në këto situata të vështira ekonomike në të cilat ndodhet ai tashti. I wish you all the best in your job, all the best for the work they are doing for people in this harsh time, especially for the Albanian community. Yes. And we hope a lot of Albanians can be saved through the knowledge that you can and the help that you can be given to them in order that can recreate their own lives.
That's what we're looking to do. So I thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.